So the osteon is one of these complete circles. So it's almost like one of the tree trunks. Remember when we looked under the microscope and we saw these big like rings? One entire large circle, like this one right here, that's an osteon. This right here, that's another osteon, right? This is another osteon, another osteon, another osteon, and so on, right? So again, the big circle, right? What do we have to identify after osteon? What's the next thing? Good, osteocytes. Do you guys remember what the osteocytes are? They're the cells, right? Osteocyte is the cell of the bone. Now the cells are really small. So in this particular model, you can't see them. They're actually in each of these little holes. So in this little hole, in that little hole, in that little hole, that hole, that hole, that hole. It's like when you guys were drawing the images yourself, you draw them probably as like kind of dark dashes, right? Each one of those is an osteocyte inside. But again, because this model is not that microscopic, we don't actually see the cell. Instead, what we're really looking at in these holes is we're looking at the next term, which is lacuna. So remember, lacuna is the space that the osteocyte lives in. So kind of think of it as like the apartment, right? And the apartment is the lacuna, is the space, and then the people live in the apartment, or the osteocytes live in the lacuna. So when you're looking at this model, when I point to one of these, it's actually a lacuna, which is the space, and inside the lacuna you'll find the osteocyte. All right? So I'll show you another model in a second, and those will be more clear.
So when we label a lacuna, it will be the same direction as the osteocyte.
Right, right. So if you're labeling, if I'm just pointing to this, you can know that it's the lacuna with an osteocyte inside. Okay, the next term is canaliculi. Canaliculi are actually small little canals, and what they do is they connect one osteocyte to the next. So if you look really closely on this model, you can't see it too well, but you saw it under the microscope, you'll notice that from each lacuna, there's little, almost like spider-like branchings from it. Really, really tiny branchings. And each of those little tiny branchings are canaliculi. So again, if you locate a lacuna and you look at the tiny branchings out, they're the canaliculi. So let me actually switch over to this model and show you so it's a little more clear. So this is our second model of the bone. So this is more zoomed in. So this entire big circle is one osteon. And now you guys see these little red things right here? So now that's actually an osteocyte. And if you were to look really closely, you'll see a blue dot in the middle of it. What do you think that blue dot is, or the dark purple dot? Nucleus, right? So in this model, you actually see an osteocyte with the nucleus in it. And then you guys see these little red lines branching out of it? So what do you think those are? Yeah, those are the canaliculi, right? So I said find an osteocyte, which is the cell, and then look for the little, almost like branching spider legs off of it, and each one of those are canaliculi. Over here, what you see is a lacuna, and the lacuna is empty, right? It's like a vacant apartment, right? This is the empty lacuna, or the space, where an osteocyte would live in. So that's why this model is going to show you some things that the other one doesn't. Okay? So after canaliculi, then, yeah. Canaliculi connect one osteocyte to the next. Yeah, so if you take a look here, right, here's one osteocyte, here's the next neighboring osteocyte, and notice the canaliculi basically connect the two. Right, so they help communicate. Yeah, thanks, Ashley. All right, other questions? Okay, so after the canaliculi, what we need to find is the lamella. So remember from our drawings before, lamella are like the tree ring, right? So for instance, if this is one osteon, it's going to have many lamellas in it. So for instance, here's the first ring, or the first lamella, right? Here's the second lamella, third, fourth, and fifth, right? So each of those individual tree rings is a lamella. So again, if you look at this one, right, so here's one whole osteon, and then here's one lamella, a second, a third, and then the fourth outer one, right? So it's each of the rings. Or if you look at it here, like this is kind of like almost in like cake-like fashion, so this each one would be a lamella, right? So each one of those tree rings inside the osteon. Okay? What what do we need to know after lamella? Yep, next term is central canal. So central canal you'll find in the middle of the osteon. So for instance, if this is one osteon, dead in the middle is your central canal. Right? If this is another osteon, again, dead in the middle is your central canal. And your central canal is going to have a lot of blood vessels and nerves, which is why in the model, some of the central canals have a red dot in it, because those red dots represent blood vessels. So again, here's another central canal, here's another osteon, central canal in the middle, another osteon, central canal in the middle. Or with this model, right, since this one thing is an entire osteon, this is the middle is your central canal. And you'll notice the blood vessels and the nerves in the middle right there. Okay, after central canal, we need to find the perforating or Volkmann's canal. So you can use either term. Perforating, basically the scientific term for it. Volkmann was the guy who discovered it, which is why it's also named Volkmann's canal. So the Volkmann's canal or perforating canal, what they do is they'll connect one central canal to the next. So for example, here's one osteon and here's its central canal. Here's a second osteon and here its central canal. And then notice you've got this blood vessel connected to the two central canals. So that right there, that connection, is the perforating or the Volkmann's canal. We can see more over here, right? Here's one central canal, here's a second central canal, here's a third central canal, and this perforating canal is connecting all of those. You can even see it on the side, right? So again, look at these, like half of the osteons are shown, and the central canals are right here. If you turn it sideways a little bit, you notice the central canals go all up and down. And then right here, going across, that entire structure is a perforating canal because it's connecting 1, 2, 3, 4 central canals. Okay, any questions on the perforating canal? All right. Next, after the perforating canals, is the periosteum. Periosteum, you might recall, is the outer covering or membrane of the bone. So whenever you guys grab any of these fake bones in your box, what you're basically holding on to is the periosteum, the entire membrane that's covering your entire bone. Right? So for this model, this is the outside of the bone and this is the inside of the bone. So see this blue right here, this blue layer? That's again your outer membrane, that's the periosteum. So again, it's this blue layer and that's what you would be finding all on the outside. And then again, right here on the outside, you have the compact bone. The next thing you need to look at is spongy bone. So again, all of this is compact bone, right? Like we saw in the model, this is all compact bone. But if you go towards the middle, you're going to find spongy bone. So here, this is the outside, and as we go towards the middle's over here. So now notice when we get to this portion, you no longer have the osteons. You don't have these nice circles anymore, okay? So what that means is up here, we've actually reached spongy bone. And so in spongy bone, you don't have osteons. Instead, you have a structure called trabeculae. So when you look for all the little bone pieces in the spongy bone, which are these right here, again, the same color as the compact bone, it's this beige color. Each one of these is a trabeculae. All right, so you can identify those. And the membrane on the inside is called the endosteum. So if you look in there, you see the word endo in there, right? So exo means outside. What does endo mean? Yeah, inside. So again, this is outside, and then we look inside right here, before we reach spongy bone, you'll see this kind of, it's almost like a peachy pink, and it's smooth on right here on the inside. That's your endosteum, so it's your inner membrane. All right? So periosteum is your outer membrane, and endosteum is your inner membrane. And then again, the last thing you need to find is the bone marrow, and for that, right, we go back to our model of the real bone. And again, here's the cavity, and in the cavity is where you're going to find your bone marrow. Okay. Any questions on that? Yeah, Ashley. Trabeculae is the bone in spongy bone. So for instance, this entire part is compact bone, right? And it has all these osteons. When you get to spongy bone on the inside, notice we don't have osteons anymore, but they're still bone pieces, right? So this is a bone piece, that's a bone piece, that's a bone piece. Each one of these bone pieces in spongy bone are called trabeculae. All right, thanks for asking the clarification.
And the spongy bone is one.
The spongy bone is on the inside, right? So here is the outside with compact bone. You have no compact bone because it has the osteon, the circles. And then when you move to the inside, you no longer see the osteon. Now you've reached spongy bone. Okay. And again, remember you can identify compact versus spongy bone in the real bone, right? I'll have you guys come up here and look at it.